Welcome to Caseback Watches. My name is Tim, and in this episode I'd like to speak about economy and the question, can we save our money with wristwatches, and about the economy of luxury goods. And before we speak about wristwatches, let me give you a little foray about currencies. Okay, this is important to understand what we can do with wristwatches and what we cannot do with wristwatches. Okay, currencies. The problem we're facing right now is that people are out of cash. They earn nothing anymore, and so they want payments from the government, payments from the state. They want fresh capital. And the good news is that our governments can provide those payments because they can print their own money. This is the problem with modern, or not the problem, this is a modern currency. You can print. You can enlarge the amount of money which is in your economy. And the problem here I can illustrate very easy with old currencies prior to World War II, let's say, where you had your 1 billion in gold and then you had your 1 billion in cash. Perfectly easy to understand, very reliable. Modern currencies are different. The modern currency is backed by the economic strength of the country. So if you have economic power in one country, 1 billion, then you have your 1 billion in cash, and this is then represented by the economic power. But now we have the problem that so many people need money from the government that this 1 billion in cash is not enough. The situation demands that they print another billion in cash, and so they have their economy even shrinking now, but let's assume, for simplifying things, that it's still 1 billion, and now they print another billion in cash, and so they have 2 billions in cash and 1 billion only in their economic strength. And the first people who don't like this are analysts from banks, and they will say then, okay, we realize now that the amount of cash is too much for this 1 billion economic power. If this country now wants to borrow more money on the world market, we want something extra. We want more interest. We will raise the interest rates for that country, and this makes the situation even worse. Second problem, the enlargement of the amount of currency in that country will lead to inflation. As sure as it gets, it will lead to inflation. It will lead to the situation that people do not trust anymore their currency, and it will lead to higher prices in the economy. It will lead at the end to a devaluation of your money. And this is our main problem here, and that's exactly the reason why people nowadays are in need of investments. They want to store their money away from the danger of inflation, and they put it in gold, in real estate, in art, in things they see as secure. And now, if you know your wristwatches, you may have the idea, why not store the money in wristwatches? If I buy a Rolex for 10,000 US dollars or euros, then the money is in the watch. It's away from inflation. But what you should take in consideration now is the question, will the watch keep its value? Because we all know that a fine wristwatch has some sort of idealistic value in it, or you can name it brand value. We are willing to pay for a watch which cost in production maybe 300 to 500 euros. We're willing to pay for that watch 3,000 or 5,000 euros because we can expect that next year somebody will give us the money for the watch if we want to sell it, of course. So there's an expectation, there's an agreement that the value of this watch is way more than the production cost. It's an agreement, nothing more. This is not gold. The watch is not gold, right? But we saw in the past that this actually works. This actually works, this agreement works. People pay you a high price for your wristwatch. But now let's assume the situation next year during that economic crisis is so bad that a luxury wristwatch is the last thing people want. So our important question now is, will that crisis affect the demand for watches? And to answer that question, we have to speak about the economy of luxury goods right now. First, what is a luxury good? It's something very expensive. It's something rare. It's something with superior quality, and it's something with, let's say, brand value or idealistic value, if you want so. And a luxury good has all those four aspects, or at least some of them. Think of the bottle of Chateau Petrus, red wine from France, price about 2,000 euros a bottle. And of course, it's very rare because the vineyard is small. It's basically a hill. The quality is superior, but these aspects, rarity and product quality, cannot explain the entire 2,000. There is brand value in it, exactly, brand value. idealistic value in this bottle because it's a Petrus. Same thing with Rolex. And now the question, is the Rolex a luxury good? Yes, of course it is. Very good watch, production quality is absolutely there, the price is high, the brand value is there. But is it rare? No, it's not rare. And keep this in mind, please. This is a very, very important distinction because now we have to speak about the demand in that crisis. In textbooks, you often find the scenario that a crisis cannot affect luxury goods. And the idea behind this is the guy with 10 millions. Because we have a lot of millionaires on our planet, and the average millionaire is not the person with 1 million. Often they have more than 1 million. And for our example, let's assume that there is somebody with 10 millions. And let's assume now that the crisis is really hard next year. He will lose 50% of his entire wealth, which is not very realistic, but let's assume it. But normally people hedge risks with different investments. But let's assume 50% of his wealth is gone. Then he still has his 5 million euros or US dollars. He's still a very rich man. He is still a potential customer for companies like Rolex. And on our planet live, let me check my notes, 1.8 million millionaires. And so there is still a group of people, even after a crisis, who can afford luxury wristwatches. But the demand will be reduced. But for what kind of luxury wristwatches? And now we can speak about rarity. The $1 million watch. What was this manufacturer? Jacob & Co. in the United States. They offer watches for $1 million. And those watches are introduced for a very small group of people. I mean, we're talking here perhaps about 100 or 1,000 people who can spend $1 million on a watch. And my prediction here is an economic crisis will not affect the price of this $1 million watch. No. It is rare and it is designed for a very small group of people. On the other hand, you have our Rolex from our example, produced for the mass market. It is a luxury product, yes, but it's designed clearly for the mass market, and there are not those 100 super rich people who can survive everything. That's not the case here. We have there a large group of potential customers, a mass market, and a mass market will suffer in an economic crisis, as sure as it gets. And so my prediction is that you have a range between, let's say, this $1 million watch and Rolex. And Rolex will suffer a bit because the mass market goes down. The $1 million watch will not suffer because there is no mass market. There are 100 customers. And between them, you have the other brands, your other brands. And there you can see, there you can ask yourself, is my watch manufactured for a mass market or for a very small group of people which will be untouched by that crisis? And so recommendation here must be, do not dump your watches because you think there will no demand tomorrow. This is certainly not the case. But it might be a good idea to focus on brands you consider luxury and rare, designed again for a smaller group of people and not necessarily for the mass market. And it might be a good idea, of course, to hedge risks, not put everything in watches, not let everything in cash. Maybe a mix is a good idea. Some luxury wristwatches, hard brands, some cash, and some other assets, of course, you might choose on your own. And you know, I'm an optimist, and I'm somewhat proud of this because this morning I've lost, I think, 1,700 euros because I made a payment months ago to a traveling company, the first payment for vacation in July, and apparently the company is bankrupt now because of the situation, of course, and I think I will not see again my 1,700 euro payment. This is painful. And it illustrates that this is not a harmless situation here. But at the end, I found an interesting number. Let's assume the millionaire from our example with the 10 millions. Let's assume this is Germany. Let's assume this is Germany. And let's assume the situation is so bad that Germany, you can put in here your own country, that Germany loses 50% of its wealth. 50%. I mean, it's not really realistic. You need, I think, a full-scale war to lose 50% of your economy. But let's assume it, that this is the situation. Then we are on the level of the year 1993. I remember this year 1993 in Germany. It was average. The next video, by the way, could be the best drink for an economic crisis. What do you think? Put it in the comments, please, if you want to see the video, the perfect drink for an economic crisis. And if you really want to see that video, then please hit the subscribe button. Then we are close connected, which I think is important in these days, right? And so, let me thank you very much for your attention, and maybe until next time.